Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. And this week we have David Lane with us. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, very good. Can you tell the audience a little bit about sort of who you are, what you do?
Yeah, I can do. But firstly, let me just say it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be invited on here. I think you've had some real big hitters and some heavy hitters and big shots on here, and I'm humbled to sort of even be included. So thank you.
Welcome.
But anyway, yeah, David Lane. We have a little company called Workshop 77. We have an offshoot brand called Oshe Design. Some of you may know, but the Oshe was an African god of thunder, and it was sort of a play on that and my heritage, having originally been from South Africa, we have a little workshop in Northamptonshire, sort of halfway between Daventry and Towcester. So I suppose car central for the UK. And we have a little workshop there. We've gone through a couple of little changes. We just started out having a bit of fun, trying to kick something about for a little while, and just seeing how things went. And within a few months, that sort of expanded. And then now we're about to make our big, what I'm referring to as version 3 change, which is moving into some purpose-built workshops, which we've bought and having built as we speak. So causing huge amounts of stress. Making me the world's biggest bloody cynic, So
We'll get to the new build,
yes.
And I've got loads of sort of building questions, whatever about that sort of stuff. How did this all come about? Like how? Because you've not been fixing cars or anything like all your life. That's not the case. Where's this come from?
No, I'm not. I'm not an expert. I'm not a mechanic. I've always been interested in cars. I've always liked cars and motorbikes. I did have a bike shop specializing in two-stroke when I was racing two-stroke MX bikes and stuff in South Africa.
Cool.
No, I was a management consultant in the UK. I came over here, and but how it came about, I suppose, is that we needed to make a change from what I was doing. I sold my shares in the business. I sold a little business up in Manchester where we'd been for about 8 years. And we wanted to make a change. We'd looked at maybe moving to Australia or just trying to do something different. I'd gotten tired of the grey weathers and the wet winters. And initially the plan, having chased this girl and caught her and still have her captive-ish. 22 years later, actually. It was to come to the UK for sort of 5 years, and it's my 20th year in the UK. So it's gone, and we're probably committed for a little while now because we have a little sprog. So we're committed, well, at least until he's 18, I imagine, I suppose. But anyway, we moved down to Northamptonshire. Lindsay got a new job.
Sunny Northamptonshire.
Sunny Northamptonshire. Yeah. And actually, as you've said that, the sun has sort of just lit up the church that's outside the window.
Nice.
So yeah, good timing. Well, we'd had a bit of a rough ride with IVF. We didn't really get terribly sort of involved in it, but we'd sort of gone down this path. And on this journey, and we'd had 8 rounds of IVF over 8 years, and some of them were pretty rough rides and stuff. And we actually weathered it fairly well. I think trying to do sort of psychology 101 on it is because we weren't terribly sort of taken with having to have a family, but it was something that we'd started, and we're both, I suppose, a little committed to these things. And anyway, so we had this little boy, and he was pretty special to us. And so Lindsay took a year off work, and I thought, I may as well take a year off work, because at that stage I was refurbing old houses and just sold the last house that we had. We'd done a number, just under 10, I suppose. And we were at home for a year with this little boy, which was fine and fun. But during that time, I found that I was actually a little bored as well. There's only so much you can do when you're at home. So in that meantime, I'd started one of the first cars. I'd built this sort of... I'd had some fast cars, sold the fast cars, and bought a Spider replica, a 550 Porsche Spider replica, a Martin and Walker actually, and I've driven a couple, and I'd driven a few before then as well. And actually, this was a particularly well built car because they can range from being quite good to death traps, absolute bloody death traps. And this was quite a nice one, and we made a number of modifications to it. I just did it, found some people local.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're in the middle of car centre UK, so it was easy to find guys, air cooled specialists, guys just to tweak things, etc. And we did that, and that was the first sort of little project, and I quite enjoyed that because I'd gone from these fast cars capable of doing, I don't know, 170 or something miles an hour, death machines, as you and I've discussed before, but to something that was sort of losing control at 35 or 40 miles an hour.
Death machine at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, no, more like just broken legs machine. You know, you don't die at 40. You just end up being mangled. So infinitely safer. And that's how I kind of got into that. And then was it, where was it? Festival of Speed, actually. And I'd seen a car for sale. And I've said it before. I've said it in a little video that Ollie did of ours. It was one of Adam Hawley's first cars. In fact, I think it was his first car that he'd done at Theon. And it was for sale. I rang him up and I said, "Hey man, how much is it?" And it turned out I couldn't afford that money. But maybe I should have, because now they're even more expensive. But I saw it, and typical petrol head. You look at these things and you go, "Hey, come on, man! I can find one on eBay. Surely I can do that for a fraction of the price."
Yeah.
And then you find one on eBay, quite luckily, and you buy this thing, and then you start doing the work on it, and then it ends up costing 4 or 5 times what it would have cost just to buy one. So anyway, that's kind of how I fell into it. So it was during that first year off of our little boy Ethan, that I was involved with these cars and doing this car up, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And as any petrol head would, and project managed it. I used my experience, I suppose, as a management consultant, and as having project managed house builds and refurbs. It's fundamentally the same thing, isn't it? You get best of breed, or you get specialists in, or people who tell you that they're good, and you find out the hard way. Some of them may or may not be, but generally the whole process was thoroughly enjoyable. But at that stage I thought, gee, this has cost me retail on labour plus VAT, plus 20% markup on parts, and I'm paying full retail on parts and stuff, and maybe there's something we can do. The car ended up just down the road from me in Wheaton, where we currently are, with a company called Advanced Motorsport, and they were sort of the last people in the process really to put the car together. And they were going through some changes, and Dan, the proprietor there, was making a couple of redundancies and scaling back on the business, just focusing things, I think, a little. So there was one of the chaps who was there, and a couple of them had been working on the car, and I'd been down with this car every day practically, going in there going, "Right boys, what have you done now?" Micromanaging to the max, just generally getting in the way, I suppose. But during that stage I thought, well, I can, if these guys are being made redundant, let's just have a look around the rest of the site and see if there's something available. At that stage I had another 1973 car which I knew needed work and needed refurbing and restoring and trying to do to it what I'd done with the beige car, the beige 911, the 1970 911 hot rod. And we sort of pushed Rob's toolboxes out of Advanced Motorsport at number 5 down at the depot, building 5, and pushed it into building 77 and workshop 77, and it was only 1,000 square foot. In fact, it's the old building that used to belong to a buddy of ours, his rental, Ollie Mullard, who's down at Bicester now. He's aluminium welding. You may or may not know of him, but
no, I've not come across him.
Anyway, and he does some cool stuff. So we took over his old shop, and one of the chaps who was one of the neighbours, one of the tenants down at the site as well, Matt Edge, who's become a friend of ours, had a couple of cars that needed some work on, and the rest is history. So they got pushed in there, they got busy, we got busier. We learned a lot of things along the way. Very quickly ran out of space, actually. These cars can take up a lot of space, and a couple of other buildings were becoming available. So we went from version 1 in the various iterations into version 2 quite quickly, and then version 2.0 and 1 and 3 and where we're at now. So few sort of personnel changes, people coming in that we tried out and worked quite well together, but things have changed and they've gone on to do some of their own things now, it's fun. To be brutally honest, it's probably gone beyond being fun now to being a bit more serious, and perhaps COVID has a lot to answer for, I think, but it's become a bit grindy. It's a little bit of a grind out there. There's this general feeling, I think, of animosity, a little bit. I think people are feeling a bit got at or something. 2 years in now, so it's kind of not surprising. But it's been less fun the last year. You know, we've had a couple of things go wrong. We've learned some valuable lessons. You know, so at least that's the one thing we can do. My insurance company have picked up the tab on a 911 engine that went wrong for a customer of ours, who's actually still a client customer of ours, and actually still a good friend. So you know, it wasn't sort of terribly malicious. But it's good, you know. We've held our hands up to mistakes that we've made and things that we've learned along the way. But it's also helped me very much define what we wanted to do and what we wanted to try and focus the business on, and the new buildings will help with that. So you know, so we're constantly trying to evolve it, but constantly trying to have fun. What
have been some of the lessons you've learned, like moving forward, having sort of jumped into this space?
Yeah. There's certain projects we don't want to do. You know, there's a lot of requests for restoration type work. You know, these guys have got rusty sills on a 1946 Beetle or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know when they started making Beetles. Were they around in 46? You tell me. So
I don't know.
Anyway.
Probably.
Bloody old.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So yeah, 19. Yeah.
Maybe.
No, there must have been. It's post-war. So anyway, so an early Beetle pitches up, and the sills are all rusty, and the arches are shot, and it's failed its MOT, and then somebody wants us to weld it up, and we spent tons of hours welding this thing up, and trying to do all this work, and actually visually the car hasn't changed very much. You know, a lot of it's just been all this welding work, and it just eats the hours with welders and grinding and cutting and fabbing panels up. And I always liken it to being a little bit like a surgeon. You know, you have to sort of go out and tell everybody and give them the unfortunate news that I'm afraid, you know, the patient has passed away. They didn't make it, you know, and that's how I feel about all these projects. And it's just, you know, it's rubbish. I don't like doing it. So, so it's just nice to try and focus on nice, clean builds and stuff. So we sort of learned what not to do there. We've learned that there are experts in their field, and it is probably better to leave it up to experts. You know, we toyed with the idea of starting our own paint shop because getting decent painters can sometimes be challenging. You know, I have relatively high standards, and it's easy to pick fault with paint. I think, you know, it doesn't take super magnificent eyes. You can just walk around and you can start picking holes in things, and so it's easy for me to do that. It's less easy for me to pick out if somebody's built an engine wrong, obviously, because I don't have that experience. So we toyed with the idea of opening a paint shop, and then worked out that actually, do you know what, we're probably best off leaving it with these best of breed guys we've got around here. So we have degrees of painters that we use, and body shop guys, and once again, we're in car mecca for the UK, so we have a plethora of guys on our doorstep that we can just rely on to do engineering for the bits we need. You know, gearboxes, for example, engine. Dave Knight, Knight Engine Services, will do all our engineering on all our motors. Normandales we use for paint. We use Matt, use Paul, use Motion Factory Ollie down in Milton Keynes. So you know, we've got these guys we can pick and choose from now.
How did you find these people?
You know, mostly I think social media. Sam. I think you know Instagram and Twitter and people reaching out or asking a question, and then just word of mouth. You know, the usual word of mouth thing. But it sometimes is the same people that are used repeatedly. So it's not difficult to find them. You know, you know, Normandales is up the road, but they do the Williams F1 cars. They do a number of other Porsche manufacturers' cars, including high-end stuff. They even do specials on Aston Martins, for example. So you know, it doesn't take a lot to find out who these guys are. So.
Yeah, it's always worth finding that the person that does the special stuff for a manufacturer. Because
yes, if you
like,
can afford it.
If you can afford it. If it's within budget and whatnot, and that's what you're going to do. But like, they have their own paint shops. They have all their stuff, and they're like, but it's not good enough for this.
Yeah.
So they said, you know, I mean, manufacturers outsource.
Oh yes, of course, yes. Yeah, no, good point.
So they must be good. I was talking to someone recently about respraying cars, and people are like, oh, but you lose the manufacturer warranty. It's like, well, no, you lose it on the paint.
Yes.
And if you go to a manufacturer, they might do, I don't know, 7 years of paint before corrosion might come through, or 10 years they might warranty it for. If you go to one of these really high-end paint places, they might say lifetime.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, they're saying it's going to last forever, and if there's ever a problem, I'll just go back to them.
Yes.
For the rest of the car, I'll take it back to the manufacturer.
Yeah. Good point. Because you sprayed your F40 famously, didn't you?
Yes, and that was by an outfit like that.
Okay.
A place called Seventy7 in Italy who do the special paints for Ferraris. So if you have a Pista that's got stripes on it or something, or a LaFerrari that's like a different color other than the 4 colors you were allowed by Ferrari to have after spending your 1.5 million euros or whatever it was.
Really, red, Rosso red, Corsa red, and special
yellow. And another yellow. It was literally like that. It's like 5 colors, one of which is white and one of which is black. So it's 3 colors.
It's 3 colors.
But yeah, so it's Zanassi with the people that handled all that sort of stuff. So
wow,
that was one of those find the right people.
Okay, so it wasn't a farm somewhere around the middle of.
No, it wasn't a shed. I mean, it probably is a shed. It's just a shed in Italy, so it sounds exotic.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Oh, cool,
so
man.
you've got Workshop 77, which sort of does work. What will you take in? What will you do within that name?
Well, it's got to be cool. It's got to be.
Who decides
it's got to be
that?
cool. Yeah. The universe. You know, Clarkson's cool wall. You know, who decides that? And it's kind of that. But ideally it's got to be a cool car. And we've had some problem customers, and I'm very keen to avoid that in the future as well. So yeah. It's there's no hard and fast rule like that. But so Workshop 77 effectively get cars in, and we will do certain things to them. I suppose I'd always considered that it was perhaps a little clumsy having Workshop 77 and Oshe Design sort of together, because what are we, who are we, how does it work? But having spoken to a couple of people, I involved a small PR company with Nick Elwood, and sort of asked the question of them, and I needed an external opinion really to say, look, is this dumb, or is this just, or should I continue with it? And they seem to think we should continue with it, and that certain cars can be workshop cars, because Workshop 77 cars, because they're being breathed on. So they'll come in and be, I suppose, for lack of a better word, customized. That can sound like a dirty word, because it can sound a little bit health-y. But stick on V8 badges or something like that. That'd be cool. That's the first thing we do when a car comes in.
Just put all the badges on the back.
All the badges.
Diesel,
all the badges.
V8, petrol, AMG,
turbo, GTS,
turbo,
GTO. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so we'll do that, and because we have in-house trimming, it means that we can customize certain things. There's a big move now, I think, in the Porsche world. Guys are going for the Pepita 911R type. Seat centers, and I think it looks really cool. But we can do all of that, and we can make these cars sort of individual. I know that you with your GT3 RS, for example, it is pretty much individual to you. If you see a photo of that car, even sans number plate, you'll know it's your car, because it is your car. I mean, make no mention, obviously, of F40 Blue, because that's very super distinctive, super customized, Halford style. But it's just so I think people sort of want that, and we've done quite a few cars like that. First and foremost, I think they have to be drivers' cars. I do want them to drive and handle nicely. We did a little Z3 actually, so it was the right engine one, but we dropped the suspension down a little with some Super Pro bushes. They're concentric bushes, so it doesn't. Whenever you drop a Z3, it pushes the camber out to -3 or something. So it's just ridiculous. Nice, But so little things that you can do that don't cost £1 trillion getting Öhlins setups on there, and we dropped it down a little, center gravity, did the setup on that, and they did a lovely job, and the car just drove nicely. Little things, little spotlights in the front that were amber, so the customer knew it was his, and a couple of little changes internally, and that was kind of cool. So those are sort of Workshop 77 cars. The Oshe Design cars, Oshe follows an ethos of having to be sort of, I suppose, in the process back to bare metal. But for me, I want them clean and fast. They don't always have to be fast. It just kind of that clean and fast. They're analog cars, but they're taken back. They're streamlined. They don't have that, and I've said it before and I'll say it again now, but they don't have the classic car element sort of engineered out of them. We don't take everything out to remove that classic car feel. That 1973 911 hot rod that we did was mostly as a 911 hot rod, but KWV3 suspension on an F-Series car, which was pretty unique, especially at that time. A slightly hotted up engine, but it was still the same engine. It didn't have standalone management on ITBs. We just went to 40 IDA Webers, so triple Webers on there, and it was still very much a classic 911, pre 1974 911, and it was a lovely car. And so that's kind of what we try and do. But then we do customize them for the customer. So we've just done a 911 ST for Faisal, a good client and friend of ours, and he had a number of changes and requirements for the car. He wanted a roll cage, he wanted ST look of various things.
Yeah.
He wanted the FIA papers, which we got, which was difficult to get, if I'm honest, especially during a pandemic.
What hoops do you have to jump through to get FIA papers?
Well, primarily you have to decide which period you're going for. So this one happens to be G2, so up to and including 1971. And it has to be as it would have been raced in period. As an ST, 911 ST would have been raced in period, up to and including the end of 1971. So in this instance, it's a 2.3 twin plug MFI motor with a 901 gearbox, because they only used the 915 gearbox in 1972. The bumper had to be a certain spec, had to be a TE bumper, and that's where we originally failed on, actually, because Jürgen Barth, the photos get taken and then sent through to the FIA, and they look at it, and Jürgen was the one who was looking at this particular car and failed us initially on having the wrong bumper. We had an S bumper with a little lip,
right?
And, so that wasn't allowed. So we swapped the bumpers, and so it has to look and conform to being as per period. So it's not terribly onerous, but we had massive delays, of course, because of the pandemic. We have a local chap who came out. Jeff Moyes was the guy who came out. He photos it and he submits the application on our behalf, which isn't inexpensive or not time consuming. So yeah, something like that. And
it's expensive and time consuming.
That's what it is. Yeah, me trying to get fancy with my English just because I'm being interviewed by car celebrities like you, and then it all gets submitted. But so from an actual admin point of view, Jeff did most of the work probably, and then the customer picks up the tab, so easy enough. But and then we got the paperwork. So
and then that can then race in any FIA GT sanctioned event or something like that.
I think so. Yes. So it's HTP, the historical technical passport. So that allows it to race. Yes, as per period. Yeah.
Because I wonder, because you see a lot of, let's say you go down to Goodwood, and you see a lot of cars that have been made to conform that may not be the originals. I can't tell because they're the same as the originals, and they get marketed to the Joe public as the originals. And
yes, and they cost £1 million to make.
And they do cost £1 million to make.
So they are,
So they're pretty legit. But some of them seem significantly faster than they should be, maybe.
Yes.
But you wonder also, like what level of preparation can you do to sort of chassis and stuff? Because I know if you took an early car and you rip it all the way back to zero, it's not. I'm sure it's not seam welded the entire way around, and strengthened in little places and stuff. So presumably there's some play in what you can do in that area without getting. Someone's
without getting
look,
caught.
But how do you get caught? How are you going to get caught if you've got an interior in the car?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think it's exactly that. You can only mark it on what you can see. I mean, crumbs, isn't that what people do with MOTs as well?
Yeah.
Take the windscreen out because you can't knock it for having a cracked windscreen if there's no windscreen to check. So
I remember taking my GT3 RS to get an MOT done. I've had some funny stories with that car of doing things that people would go, you probably shouldn't do that. I took it to a quick fit.
Okay.
For an alignment.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And everyone was like, what? Afterwards, it was like, what the hell are you doing? But I took it to one of the ones that had the full laser,
the Hunter
whatever
setup or something.
setup. And the mechanic was like, he was actually pretty good, but he we got it all down to within point whatever of the manufacturer specification, all round camber, everything.
Oh, well.
But and I think it cost me like 20 quid.
Oh yeah,
because they just have a price for a car.
Yeah, that's what it is. Nissan Micra, GT3 RS, Veyron.
Yeah. And then they get to, I took it to the same place actually for an MOT once, and they look under the car and they're like, okay, well, it's got underfloor from the front all the way to the back, so we can't see anything, but we're not allowed to take it off. I don't think they're necessarily allowed to take it off. No. So they just have to go, that's what that looks like. Seems all right. Check it, blah, 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 blah. Carry on. Worked well. But the alignment, that was brilliant. I don't know whether anyone will ever let me do that again, but it was spot on.
You got to spend more money because it's a more expensive car, because otherwise it can't be nearly as good as what it should have been. So it's impossible.
I'll tell you what though, that I learned a big lesson that day on an unaligned car versus an aligned car. Because I just did it because someone was like, maybe you should just get an alignment. Just get one. And I saw how out it was. And it's not, we're not talking big numbers, are we? It's like a degree or something. But the way the car feels and handles, and that was just on a factory setup, was night and day different. So playing with these things can make such a difference to a car, can't it?
So important. I think it's one of the most important things. If the car drives like crap, it's no fun. I did that actually with the hot rod when I built that. There are a number of changes to it you've seen around the car, but top mounts have been changed. It's got a 993 subframe in the back of a 1970 car, and KW had to, from their motorsport department, had to custom build the rear dampers, the real coilovers for me, and the car was almost undrivable. It was a sort of a suck it and see moment. I jumped in it and shot up the A5, and at 90 miles an hour I thought I was going to die. This thing was all over the show, and I thought, gee, man, these classic Porsches, this is what they are.
Sketchy, yeah.
They're shit, yeah. And I went up to Centre Gravity, and Chris had a look at it and set it all up, and I drove it back, and it was a closed road because I must have hit it much faster than is legally allowed. And I just thought, God, literal transformation. It went from being dangerous wow to wow, really good and lovely. And I've subsequently made some more changes to the suspension and just set up and just changing the spring rates in the rears and halved the stiffness of them. So they went from a 90 170 down to a 50 200, so a bit more free travel, but only 50 newton per millimeter on the spring rates, and it's transformed it again. The roads are so bad out there now. They're so potholed, they're so bumpy and lumpy.
Especially on your site.
Oh, mate. Anyway, I know. We're well famous for it. We're well famous for it. You just Google Wheaton, the depot, and the first thing that comes up is like photos of 4 foot deep potholes. Yeah. I've seen a whole family of people living in one once, just tarpaulin over the top. But so the roads are so bad that actually you do need something a little softer and a little more compliant, and it's transformed the car again. So it went from really bad to really good to now even better. And that's just that was just geo, and then just changing the rear springs.
And was that how did you pick that spring rate? Was it like an educated guess or like ask around or what?
I asked the experts, best of breed again. So I said to the guys at Centre Gravity, what should we be going with? And they were like, well, and why would you not? Why would you not use their years of experience? And that was what they suggested. And it is a little bit. That is the problem, I suppose, with the work we do, in that a lot of it is prototyping. We don't have a production line. We haven't spent billions trying to develop the new I-Pace or F-Pace or whatever car may be coming out, and we can make changes and things. This is a one-off setup, a one-off car, and we made the changes to it, and then suck it and see, man. Get out there and see what it's like, and you go, actually, or gee, we just spent 10 grand and doesn't feel any different, and there is that risk at every stage. But
there's something I've enjoyed a lot on some. I did it on one test day. It was in my Radical, and we did. There wasn't much going on. I think we were on a track day, so setting a pure lap time was not going to really happen. So doing that sort of comparison versus various days. So we said, why don't we try some radical setup changes? Because I'd never really done it on the car, just to see what the hell it feels like. And we did the first with that sort of setup. You might halfway through the day change the rear springs or like change whatever. Like it's just something that people just. They change that stuff all the time.
Wow, okay.
But
sounds major.
With this, we ran dampers and we did full soft. We did my normal setup's like somewhere in the middle, but we did full soft. I think we started by doing full hard, like just lock everything off, just crank it all down, drive it. Car gets like super twitchy, like just really like. Everything's like, oh. And then do it full soft. And actually the difference between the two is, I think in sort of mechanical terms, is not very much. But the perception feel was huge. Like you then go to like, oh my God, this is like a boat or something that like rocks back and forth when I go forward and backwards and like rolls around the corners. Now, if you compared this to the levels of roll on a road car, it would be like a 50th. Of the amount, but
fractions,
the perception feel of driving the car was huge difference between the two. And then I started rolling in the middle and just adjusting it towards. But just that process of doing the extremes, was really interesting. And then also looking at the lap times and seeing if there is any lap time difference. And then there's that sweet spot where possibly it might be faster. Like if you were a pro driver. There's a setup that they will probably be faster at. But since I'm not a pro driver, I probably personally want it a little bit softer so I can feel a bit more progression, like tiny bits. And
a little more forgiving, I imagine.
Gives me more confidence and I will push harder, so I will go faster. But that exercise was brilliant and I would love to do it on more cars, like on my other road cars and stuff, and just do like geo setups and like mess around, change some stuff, drive down a road, come back, change some stuff. But it's difficult on the road to get that consistent test situation.
Yes. Yeah, because you look out the window and the next thing the temperatures drop 10 degrees, and I suppose that can change a multitude of things. I know we've said about tire guys in the past, and I'm not good enough really to feel the difference in tires unless I was doing exactly that in a situation where we were taking the exact same car and taking that wheel off and putting the different wheel on with a different tire, and it's the same temperature, the same weather conditions on the same track, and then I'd probably feel it. But normally, going up and down the A5, I can't tell the difference between
and you're not
Nankangs and Yokohamas and
you're not pushing
Cup 2s.
hard enough, or you shouldn't be pushing hard enough.
I never do.
I'm sure you'll be able to tell the difference between the best in terms of the most grippy feel car tire, whatever that is, versus the worst, cheapest one. You would feel a massive difference.
Yes. But between all of those that are up in that top sort of niche, But so on the Radical, were you just really changing rebound and damp on the things, or were there?
High speed, low speed. Damping and whatever.
So just rebound and compression. Okay. Cool.
And then we do change anti-roll bars and springs depending on situations. But I've generally got the car at the moment roughly how I like it. And then I haven't raced that car in a while, but
you used to race it. You used to race it a lot?
I used to race it a bit. I raced the previous Radical I had a lot more. So I had the baby one, the SR1.
And you got an SR3 now or something?
And I've got an SR3, which is just more stable, more downforce, more slicks. But
more
as
serious,
a car,
more serious.
Yeah, more serious, but actually just a much better car to drive. They've since changed the SR1 has evolved quite a bit since I drove it. And I think one of the main problems was the tire.
Okay.
So that was going from a kind of like a fast road tire.
Yeah.
In the SR3s, you're on slicks. Now, a huge price difference between the two for running them, but what that meant is in the dry, the SR1 was pretty good, but in the wet, it had no tread. It had like no tread, and it was quite a hard compound, and your car is like 4 mil off the floor or something. Like, so you hit a puddle, your car takes off, and just as a novice,
yes,
that was sketchy as hell. As I think if I went back and drove it now, it wouldn't be as sketchy because you've got more experience. But yeah, going to a car that will do significantly faster lap times, not much quicker in a straight line, but just a lot faster in the corners, was a more sensible option from a safety point of view, which doesn't, it's slightly counterintuitive, but absolutely was the case. Like, I was firing off the track in the SR1, and it doesn't happen that often in SR3 unless you really got it wrong.
I don't really know the Radicals much at all. I know the name. I could probably recognize one in the car park, but that would be about it. But
it's a small, lightweight prototype type thing.
But what are you racing them in? I mean, I'm fascinated by this.
They have a thing called the Radical Challenge, which is a one-make series.
Yes.
And it's just SR3s. And this year, I haven't raced in it this year. They now have two classes, so they have a slightly faster car. Actually, they do. There's 3 levels of Radical, basically. 3 is the sort of middle, but is the one that most people race. 1 is like the entry level, which will still skin any supercar on a track by quite a serious margin. But like 3 is maybe not current, but a couple of years ago was GT3 race car pace. On a lap, but for a tenth of the price of racing a GT3 car. So like sort of the pound for pound, they're very, very quick in corners.
How does that sort of compare then to Ultima, for example? You've looked around the little Ultima we've built.
Yeah, so you've built an Ultima. RS. What is the one that you've built?
Ultima RS. Yeah, so that's the latest iteration of it. So I think after a few years of development and progression, it's a component car, I suppose. Kit car.
What was that like to build?
Actually, quite involving. It's not put part A to part B and then it's not like building those first Airfix models where you just glue the fuselage on and then stick the wings on and you're like, hey, that's done, man, and get glue on the inside of the canopy. It is quite involving. Everything needs doing. So there is a lot that goes into that car. You have everything in it comes in a box, but everything needs shaping and putting in. The lights come. The only thing that comes pre-assembled, I think, is the light cluster, because Mark, the owner of this car, he spec'd it up with the LED fancy lights, and so that pod comes together. But inside that, it needs little vents sort of glued in place. It needs the glass shaped and glued in place and primed up on the back of it, and then the rear covers put in place. So literally everything, every nut and bolt, every hole needs to be re-drilled. A lot of the panels have to be shaped and cut to fit the car. So yeah, very involving. I think we're at about 500 hours.
Yeah, because you look at those sorts of builds, and I think everyone has the idea, whether it's like, a caterer. I think most petrolheads at some point in time have gone, I would like to build a car.
Yes.
Whether, whatever that form that is, a Caterham type car or,
yes,
Ultima, you're like, okay, well, this would be like really fast. And then I don't imagine most home build people would order something and then expect to be shaping stuff. Now, maybe I haven't done enough research into it, but I would sort of assume it was a bit like Lego. You put it together, bolt it in, the holes line up. But
no, not at all. Not at all. The engine comes in a crate. The engine needs a bit of modifying. This one is spec'd with the LT5, so it's that 6.2 litre supercharged V8. Out the can, 755 brake on the basic map, up to with some small mapping changes and changing one of the pulleys on the supercharger. It does 1200 brake. So it's insane. It's all the way up there. I think at 800 brake, plenty, because the car dry is apparently 930. We haven't put it on corner weights yet, but and so I would assume wet because there's quite a lot of fluid in that thing with the chargers and various things. Probably about 1150, somewhere around there, 1100.
That's going to be seriously fast in a straight line. If it can put the power down.
If it's dry, yeah, because it's a 6-speed manual. No driver aids, no power steering, no ABS, no ESC, no BBC, no ASB, just a whole bunch of WOW. I think there's going to be a bit of wow. Normally I don't call it WOW. I normally use an expletive in there, but I won't. Keep your podcast friendly. But yeah, no, I think it'll be insane. I've only gone around the little block a bit on our little bumpy roads just to make sure it was getting up to temperature, etc.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it didn't take a huge amount of time to get used to. I imagine a bit like your F40. I think probably, if you did, it wouldn't take 100 hours, that's for sure. I think, 2 or 3 hours in, you're probably getting the feel of it a little bit more and realizing actually, despite looking quite fragile, it's quite robust. Everything does seem to work quite well. It doesn't crash and bang too much. So and the cockpit seems to be quite a nice place to be. This particular one has aircon, so I think that'll be a godsend.
Yes.
Because having that bloody LT5 behind your head in that tight little space, I think that could be pretty warm normally. But
I've had one experience in an Ultima, not built by Ultima, built by someone. Bought by someone else, fixed by someone else.
Okay.
And it was like sitting in an oven, like just horrifically hot. I'm not sure everything worked because it didn't seem to have any of the power that on paper it had.
Okay.
And it was definitely pretty sketchy. But
What
that was
motor?
something what motor was it?
Yeah.
It was 650 horsepower.
So what, like an LS motor or something?
LS something?
Okay.
Yeah.
LS3. One of them. I mean, that seems to be
Something
quite
like that.
popular. But I've seen some with small block Chevys in there and all the rest of it. I've seen some LT4s that have gone into them recently. But I think the one that you kind of want now is if you're ticking all the options list when you order this thing from Hinckley, with the little carbon fiber canards on there and stuff. But AIM dash is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the LT5. Yeah.
Does the AIM dash? Can you have? Can you do like lap times and stuff on that dash?
Yes, yeah. It's the Strada 1.1, I think it is that was spec'd with this, and we didn't know much about it. And in fact, I have to say we're all getting a little old, I think, in the workshop because we were struggling with it, and then we got this kid down, 19 years old, and he walked in, he went beep, 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 never done one before, and mate, it was working within about 10 minutes. We'd all been sitting there for 12 hours, sort of scratching our heads, looking at the manual, reading the box, flipping it upside down, shaking, nothing. And then Matt came in and just went, yeah. And we said, could we do something? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, he did it all pretty well. So quite programmable. You just need to download the specs for, in this case, the Corvette C6 motor, C7 motor.
Yeah, because I have an AIM dash in the Radical, and that is linked to a GPS and does lap times and whatever and all that sort of stuff. It seems decent. Does the job. And you can, like you said, you can program a lot into that. But I think probably very different to having it. It's probably not that different to having it in a road car. Because essentially, all you just need to know is your gears. Well, yours is, your gears manual, and then temperatures, and that's about it, really.
Yeah. Well, this has even got change-up lights. So we've sort of Matt, the kid, programmed the change-up lights in it. So he's got the lights that flash across the top, and then you can choose. I think probably something like 50 different displays, or maybe it's only 20 different displays, but you can have analog looking dials or all digital or just revs or just speed and pretty cool. Yeah, I think it'd be a nice thing.
Yeah. When you said I'm just going to share my screen, just so you say like what does the Radical look like and how would it compare to something like the Ultima? So this is an SR3.
Do it's not a million miles away, is it?
It's not massively different. It's
that front
it's quite a bit lighter.
Similar. Yes, okay.
So
what weight have you got on that then?
I think it's 550 kilos. 570 maybe.
Yeah,
that's an absolute guess. But it's somewhere around there.
That's light. That is light.
250 horsepower.
Oh, okay. So way down on the power then compared to an LT5.
Way down. And with the downforce, Downforce numbers on stuff like this, I think it's 600 kilos at 110 miles an hour or something.
Wow.
Which all the figures quoted by road cars and those who listen to the podcast, apologies if you've heard this before, they're always at like 180 miles an hour.
Oh, okay.
And so it might be 500 kilos at 180 miles an hour, and they'll go, oh my God, that's loads. I think P1 was 600 kilos at 180 miles an hour. Okay. The difference, if you scale up, because it's logarithmic, whatever, all that stuff, 600 kilos of downforce, which is the weight of the car, at 110 miles an hour, if you could get it to 180 miles an hour, it would be like 4 tons of downforce.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you could drive upside down.
Well, you could drive upside down at 110 miles an hour.
110, yeah, roughly.
So
or float in space.
The difference, but that's like downforce. That's what, if you drive that car, you get a real appreciation for what downforce is.
Okay.
I would say in fast road cars, like a GT3 RS or something, you do get an appreciation for downforce because everything feels like much more stable.
Yes.
But you do not get the like face melting grip that you get with like serious downforce.
Like trying to pull G's in a pit special or something, when you're doing loops and you can't even lift your arms up. Yeah. I can imagine. Because you'd be, I mean, if the car weighs 600 and there's 4 tons at 180,
you could just go, any corner, any angle, and you just go whoop.
Yeah. Oh, cool, man. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So with Oshe Design,
yes,
you've done a couple of builds of various sorts of things. Have these been? And I know this is something because we met up yesterday and we had a chat for like 5 million hours. Wasted a lot of your time. But we talked a bit about this, so I feel like this is a reasonably good topic to dive into. So some to date have they been customer led, or have you built them and then sold them, or what's happened to the first cars?
First cars got sold because it was actually that was before there was some of them were motorbikes actually, but Oshe 1 was before Workshop 77 existed, and that was the 550 replica, and then 02 is the beige car, which is currently having its engine rebuilt as I demonstrated yesterday. 3 was the 912 that I did, so a 1968 right-hand drive 912 that we I suppose to be true to the Oshe brand now. At the time, it was one of our little Oshe cars, but to be true to the brand now, it wasn't a full Oshe build because we didn't go back to bare metal on it.
Okay.
It was a bit of a survivor car. The paint was the original paint, but we made some number of changes to it, and that was 4. 3.
What color?
Ivory.
What color was that?
It was an ivory color.
And is that what engine did you put in that?
No, same engine. So we kept matching numbers engine. So the standard little 4-pot. And I bought the car thinking, wow, these are so cute. And actually, I have to say, a lot of fun. It was quite nice and light. They're not fast. 90 brake, I think, from factory, but probably down a bit over the years. And not fast. Not fast, but I still managed to get to on closed roads again 90 miles an hour, and what's kind of cool is left-hand drive, so you're sort of just looking out and the curb is right there, and you can just judge how far you need to be based on what you can see right outside the side window. But quite a lot of fun, nice car. But having to pay for all the other cars, I remember putting it up for sale, and somebody said to me, "Why are you selling it?" And I said, "Well, I've got a 911 shaped hole that needs filling," and that was what needed. I was having to pay the money for the 02 build. 5 was the Aubergine, so we recently sold that actually. That was sold with a new auction company, and they have it, and it's gone to a new owner. I think it's part of his sort of collection. And I've seen it subsequently advertised, I think, somewhere else. So perhaps I sold it too cheap. Maybe the guy's going, "Oh wow, cool." It'd be nice if when it ends up, because I'm sure it will, no doubt, because the car looked really good. I mean, it was flawless. We spent quite a lot of time on it. The car looked flawless, but it actually drove better than it looked. It was such a lovely car to drive.
It's a cool looking thing. Just
Oh
looking at some
yeah,
pictures
you
on
got
your
some
website.
pics. Oh cool, man. Yeah. Aubergine. Well, I got it and it was a tangerine color, a US import, but I picked it up. I bought it actually on eBay from a chap down in Hastings, Dave, and I rang him up and he sounded like a cool dude, and I said, yeah, cool, I'll take it. And sort of you can do those things occasionally and just zap a whole bunch of cash at a car you've not even laid eyes on because the guy sounds like he's a cool guy on the phone. And
Yeah.
anyway, I jumped on the that's some of it going together. Yeah, I jumped on a train and went down to Hastings and picked the car up and drove it back, and it was fine. It was cool. In fact, I used it as my parts car for a little while, so I was fetching parts and stuff in
That's
it.
quite fun.
Yeah, so it just drove really nicely. That was 05, and then we've had a couple of customer-led builds, and the next one wasn't Porsche. It was an Alpha, a 105 GTV, for a guy that I met originally on Twitter, and turns out he's huge in the world of YouTube and stuff. In fact,
I had the same experience with the same guy.
Oh, have you? Oh, have you? Yeah. He's
like, we chatted a little bit on
such
Twitter,
a nice
and I was
guy,
like,
man. He's such a nice guy. So nice and down to earth, and in fact, actually, I make a point of always congratulating him first before he always hits a milestone on his YouTube channel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I don't think he's quite there yet, but Ollie, congrats on 8 million subscribers on your YouTube channel, my boy. So he's got to be bloody close to that now.
fair play.
Yeah. Anyway, so he'd been looking for a car and saying, yeah, he needs to find something. And I said, oh, gee, Ollie, why don't we build one for you? And we found a shell, and that had just been painted. And I suppose this is where we've learned some of our lessons as well. I was told that the shell was concourse. It was absolutely mint. It was perfect, and we wouldn't need to do anything to it. And then this thing arrived, and it was anything but. So that was where I decided, right, in future, every Oshe car goes back to bare metal. So we have a plan in place. Ollie's bombing around in the car now, but we need to get it back and get it completely stripped down and repainted for him, true to Oshe rules, so to speak. But that was a 105 GTV, and he had certain design cues and elements that he wanted. He wanted to keep it a narrow body. He wanted certain GTA or GTR type grills. We spent a huge amount of cash on the suspension and the brakes and just refurbing everything. Did a nice engine build on it. Yep. And it's a cool car. It's really good. It looks good. It handles nicely. It's nice and light. I got a bit of stick for that because it was apparently too light. But
What's it weigh?
Chris Frankton had it at Centre Gravity. Had it on the corner weights, and it's 805 kilograms wet.
That seems pretty light.
Yeah, it is light. Well, look, we took a bunch of stuff out of there. It doesn't have rear seats. It's got lightweight seats in the front, and in fact, on that previous pic, it's got all the trailing arms are all drilled out and stuff.
Too light. Who said it was too light, and what does that mean?
There were, the internet. The internet.
Oh, the internet. Yes, the internet.
Yes, the internet.
Font of knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I always look at these things. There's internet knowledge. Internet horsepower is also something that exists.
Oh, yeah.
How much horsepower does it have? 1,000 internet horsepowers.
Yes.
Yeah, IHP. In reality, 100. So no, not so with this car. But that was 6, and 7 was the orange. We're calling it Pumpkin, so it was Project Pumpkin. Was the 911 ST replica 1971 car. But and that's also a lovely car. I took it recently to one of your guests as you've had on here before, and everybody knows him. But Johnny Smith, we took it up to the Late Break show, and it was the first time I got to sort of push it a little bit, and it was lovely, man. It drives so nicely. Dogleg box, which I thought would be a little bit difficult, but actually it's okay. It has enough torque. Neil Bainbridge did some work on the engine as well. We had it in, we did some stuff, but then went to Neil Bainbridge and he set up the injectors and tuned the MFI on it, and did some other work. But you just tend to use it like an H box then. So, second gear mostly, second. If you're going really slowly, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and works really nicely. Yeah, lovely car.
Yeah, really you don't really want to be like going down to first too much in those cars with that gearbox. If you want it, it's like
yeah, exactly that. And I think Faisal, the owner, sort of discovered that now. He's like, oh, it's a bit notchy in first. You go, yeah, but you don't need first. Unless you're at 0 miles an hour. But even if you're only doing, I don't know, 4 miles an hour, second is fine, and it's got the torque to be able to get you out of there. So nice engine, nice 2.3, 270 brake, I think. So yeah, nice.
Sounds like a decent amount of power in something that
sounds lovely. Sounds lovely and looks cool. That actually, a little bit like I'd said about actually, I sidetracked myself earlier, but my 911, the aubergine one, was tangerine when I got it, and as we started stripping it, we saw some aubergine overspray on the inside door panels and that, and we said, right, yeah, it's got to go back to aubergine, doesn't it? Got the COA and confirmed that it was aubergine with beige leatherette interior, and I wasn't getting beige leatherette, But it went back to the original colour, but which we tweaked slightly, so it had a little bit more black in it. And it was exactly the same with Faisal's car. It came to us yellow as a bit of a race car, really. And as we started stripping it, we saw some of the original signal orange coming through. So we did some spray outs. And this is what I like doing with the Oshe cars. We had some spray outs. If you're aware of signal orange, it has a fraction of black in it in the paint recipe. So it's 0.8%. Effectively 0.8%, but sometimes people measure it in milliliters per thousand per litre. And so this is about 0.8% black, but we had to spray out at 0.8%, 0.6, 0.4, 0.2, and 0.
Yeah.
And then Faisal had all these spray outs and these chips, and he was sort of holding them in the sun and bending them and looking at it and going, this one's cool. This is a little less pasty, because actually as you put more black into it, it does tend to sort of make the signal orange a bit more pasty, and it normally is a bit more of a pasty colour than a standard sort of vibrant orange. And we settled on 0.2. So it's officially known as Faisal Signal Orange, and it's got 0.2% black in it. And I like being able to do that. I like being able to tweak these things. So it's unique to him.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I had with my SC backdate, that is signal yellow.
It is, yes.
And I one day went to Auto Farm for, I think I was taking it in for a service or something, and there was a 72S that was restored and painted at the same time as my car.
Yeah.
The guy with the 72S was having his car touched up, redone, resprayed or something. And they used what was sort of left of the paint or the same batch on my car. So they were exactly the same batch of paint from the same spray place, done 1 day before or something.
Okay.
Except they looked completely different.
Oh, really?
So my car, if you put them side by side, is slightly lighter. It's I would say it's a bit more yellow and a bit less orange.
Okay.
And
I wonder if it's the base coat. I wonder if it's a base coat as a result.
God knows.
Okay.
I almost wonder if they mixed up the paint, painted my car, ran out of paint, mixed another batch, and then did his car. Because there's no way unless it was something to do with the base.
Yeah.
But I thought signal yellow, that's my colour. I love that colour.
Yeah.
Great. But now I've seen 2 cars that are signal yellow, one of which I like, one of which is okay, and I wouldn't pick it now.
You wouldn't,
I'd be like,
okay.
I want you to colour match this car.
Yes.
Like people saying, I've got this bit of leather that I want to colour match. Yeah. But different cars do show different colours slightly differently for some reason.
Cars do. I would agree with that. Yes. Maybe the chap who was mixing the paint could have been Ryan. I wonder if it got
maybe
painted
someone
where I think it was. But anyway,
put
Ryan's
a bit more black in
there. But maybe ended up with a bit more white. But yeah.
But it's
interesting.
It's interesting, when you start to look at shades. And I met someone this morning to drive his 992 GT3, and
nice.
He was looking at my GT3 RS and was like, "What color is that?" Because I'm not sure what color that is, and he's only relatively aware of the newer colors. So I said it's aqua blue, and then straight away he said it's got a lot less purple in.
Oh yes,
than the current car color on cars, which is gentian blue. And when you look at the sort of the shade on that car, so anything that's not direct sun, the sort of fall off after that. On any of the new cars, there's loads of purple.
Okay.
And it's the same with TDF blue, the Ferrari color. There's loads of purple in that shade bit, whereas aqua blue has a lot less. And what it then does is if you put the two cars next to each other under direct lights,
Yes.
they look the same.
Okay.
But in real world situations, one just pops. The one that doesn't have the purple in it, to my eyes, just pops a little bit better, and you couldn't tell it until you put them next to each other. You'd be like, they're the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it would be the same with this 911 ST. I'd love to see Faisal's car next to another one. We're talking 0.8 versus 0.2% black. And the rest of the recipe is also the same. It's all PPG paint. It's the same, high quality paint.
Yeah.
And I would love to see how much different it is, or if there is any difference.
I bet it's.
I bet there is. I bet it's marked actually in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah. Eyes are far too good at spotting differences in stuff, like to a crazy level.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I don't know whether you have. I can look across the room and say that is not straight, and it can be, or that's not. That picture is not in the middle of that space, and it might be slightly out.
Yeah. Well, I tend to do. I suppose it's the problem with doing what we do now. Cars arrive, and instead of me looking at the car as a whole entity and going, "Wow, that's amazing," I tend to sort of start looking for panel gaps and looking down the paint and looking for something that I might be blamed for. Like, hey man, that scratch wasn't here when the car arrived, and now it is. And so it's a bit sad actually. I think I've got to try and get away from that. I think I must be a little less discerning or something.
I don't know. I think for your clients, it's good that you're
I think it has to be like that. But I've lost the enjoyment of it. If I'd seen your F40 recently or something, I'd gone, I know it's had a color change, and they've done that wrong. Although I might have been pleasantly surprised.
I think you'd just be like, that's amazing.
I probably would have been. Top 3 cars in the world. So So actually,
okay. So you're in your place now, which and the layout of the site you're on is interesting. So you started in Workshop 77. You're now in
Building 14.
Building 14,
yes.
which is very close to number 77, which is odd. And it's behind number 5. And
right next door to number 78 as well. It's
78.
70.
Like,
yeah. And building 86 is opposite or something. Yeah. So,
it's very tricky to find the building. I mean, it's not that hard, but you do walk in the site and go, right, where's the logic in how these buildings are numbered? And they've got massive numbers on the outside. Yeah. Okay, it's somewhere in there. I don't know. We'll work it out.
Super interesting site. It was apparently the escape route for the king had Napoleon managed to get into London.
Oh, okay.
So had Napoleon managed to be a bit more successful and Nelson less so, then the king would have been whisked up and stuck in the middle of the country, surrounded by the canals. So the network of canals meant that you can mobilize an army and move an army. You can effectively march an army 10 miles a day by sticking them on a canal boat and having a horse drag it up the towpath. So the army's in position but still rested. So you're not actually having to force march them.
Yeah.
Anyway, that never happened. But it was the armaments depot and stores for Anglo-Boer War, Anglo-Zulu, Crimea, World War I and II, and only stopped being used as a military base, I think, sort of 1970s-ish, I think. So as late as that. In fact, we had an old boy pop into the workshop, and he was about 163 years old, and he'd apparently worked on the site when he was a kid, and he wasn't really 160, by the way. I expected a bit more acknowledgement of like, oh wow. Just in case somebody's thinking, God, that guy is weird. Anyway, so this super old dude pitched up, and he'd been a kid, and he was responsible for distributing letters around the site, and was seen as a real sort of hero and legend at school because he was allowed onto the site and had to sign Official Secrets Act, and the military police stopped people going in there. But and he was telling us a little bit about it. But a huge amount of ordnance came out of there: guns, gun barrels, gunpowder. Later stages, I think, bicycles, military-style bicycles, and even boots. So the canal is there, and I think it was about 150-acre site. So immense site. And the owner, Michael Chittenden, and his son James are. They're trying to develop it, but it's just a huge amount of money because those buildings are big and they're listed. But it's got that canal down the middle and all the railway lines that go through.
Yeah.
And, we've managed to unearth some old photos of the place, but fascinating. But yeah,
cool
so
spot.
that's where we ended up, and our particular building as well, with those nice big windows, looks great on Instagram. But the reality is, there's 225-year-old floorboards above us, dropping 225 years worth of dust onto the cars, and those big cast iron pillars that are in the middle means we have to keep a central corridor clear. It gets pretty chilly, so it's a difficult building to heat. It has challenges. So we've been looking for a little while to try and move into a new place. It makes sense. It makes sense for the type of builds we're trying to do, and the way we're trying to build these cars. I need them to be flawless. I don't need it to look good on Instagram. I want the car at the end of it to be something we talk about. Not, oh wow, lots of nice natural light. That's it's not really important.
Was it quite difficult to find the new site?
Yes, and it's. I suppose it was. I mean, I've been looking around a little bit to try and do something different, and I thought, the plan was to maybe to buy a farmhouse and have some buildings and try and convert those, and that's the sort of dream, isn't it? You put a racetrack in the garden, and, because it's big enough. But so this is on an existing site. There are some developers. In fact, actually, the developers have got radical as well, I think. But they were busy building. They have a site. They had permission. It's only 4 miles up the road, but they have planning permission to put a block of 6, a block of 3, and a block of 2 in. And I approached them and I said, look, it'd be nice, but the block, one single building is far too small. I'd probably need 3, and you've got a block of 3. Could I buy that block of 3? And there was somebody who'd already spoken for one of the buildings, but they managed to move him off into one of the others. So we have that block of 3. So we own it. We own the freehold. We're busy building it, and it's, I suppose, efficient financially for us to be able to do that, because my wife's company recently bought my company. So my wife's company is now the top co of Workshop 77. But and she makes sure I remember it too. But she doesn't. She's very good. So we have this on a pre-existing site. But they allowed, because we own the whole block, they allowed us to make a number of changes to it. So I suppose we've done a Workshop 77 to our own building. We've breathed on it. It's about 600 mil higher than the other buildings. We have glass concertina doors instead of a standard industrial style roller shutter door that's higher. We don't need the height. We're not driving big box fans into it to load as a workshop would be. We've got mezzanine space in there. We've got it's not being built out of the same red brick. Ours is actually built out of a micro rib anthracite cladding.
Okay. So
it'll be nice and efficient, easy to put up as well, nice and easy to clean, and also look a little different to everything. I'm super jazzed about moving into it. I'm looking forward to it. We are 2 months behind schedule already. We were supposed to be in on the 21st of August. So that is presenting a number of challenges to us, because we should have vacated where we are. We're a little bit in a holding pattern right now. Yeah. We've got stuff crammed into corners that should already be in the new workshop. I've got a new chap starting, and he's only starting once we've made the move, and I'm really looking forward to him joining the team, because he's going to add a lot to it. We've got a nice team now as well, which I'm very pleased with. They've got a nice skill set. They work nicely together. They've got a lot of experience. So that's good. And I'm just really looking forward to making this move when it eventually happens. But
Has building the team been tricky? Getting sort of people that really know their shit. In.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it has. And there are a lot of people that know a lot of things. I can see why people specialize in an area. If we were car manufacturers, we could have one guy who just did that engine, and that would be all he does every single day, is hammer out that engine. And perhaps we're sort of tying one hand behind our backs on ourselves. We're hamstringing ourselves by going across, not being brand specific. The fact that we will look at Alphas, Land Rovers. What have we got in the workshop now? Super Mark III, the Ultima, a 1938 Ford pickup, a couple of Mercs, three or four Mercs.
Fiat 500.
Oh, Fiat 500, yes, that's interesting. That's going to go EV, so that's an interesting little project. Chamois SL is in. The bikes, I like the bikes too. So and Andy Bolton's 911, that Targa of his is in, a lovely looking black Targa. So yes, the fact that we're not brand specific is probably a challenge, and to find people that are prepared to do that and have the ability to be able to dot and dab onto these sorts of things while still maintaining high standards is a challenge. But you know, we're nearly 4 years in now. So having said that, we've now established something, and it may change again. You know, I need to be flexible. That's the one thing we do have that a big organisation like JLR perhaps doesn't have. You know, we are the small entity, and because of it, we are manoeuvrable. We can change it up. Gee, you know, I can walk back after this little podcast, and I can walk into the workshop, and we can change it up immediately, and you know, say, right, that's it. We're no longer doing it like this. We're doing it like that. And Aston Martin, Mercedes, Jaguar, none of them could do that really. You know, so that's perhaps our to our advantage. Yeah, building the team was difficult, but you know. We've had some guys try, and it hasn't quite worked out. We've had some guys stay around for longer, and like I said, they've gone off and doing their own thing now, and fair enough. You know, it's cool.
Yeah. What do you think future of Oshe Design? What would you like to be doing in, you know, a couple of years? Line everything up.
Yeah, well, I think, and we're lucky. I think we're just starting to get a bit of traction now. So I suppose selling build slots is one way of looking at it. You know, I think everybody, you can't help it. You can't help but look at what Rob has done with Singer and go, gee, you know, wow, aren't they the pinnacle? You know, people reimagined wasn't a word until they started using it. Now everybody's just reimagined. You know, we're reimagining this, and everything's reimagined. And so they've been very wildly successful. So that's cool. So build slots. We don't have a huge amount of space. We will use it far more efficiently than we're currently using our space, but we don't have the scale. We're not on that farm. I can't just say, well, you know, let's stick another 10,000 square foot barn up and we will expand into that. But I don't think I want that. You know, I think this is one of the things that I've learned, that I don't want a huge team. I don't want 15 mechanics running around. There is money to be made in that. We could be servicing Porsches. Especially when you find that the competition is Porsche Silverstone, for example, and I think on classic cars they're about 150 quid plus VAT an hour, and we could do it significantly cheaper than that. So you know, so we could probably attract people in like that, and maybe do it a bit more like Auto Farm does, but that brings a lot of pressure, and that, to be perfectly honest, because this isn't a commercial venture, this isn't something that is, you know, I want it to wash its face really. That's really all it's about. So if we can bring in those projects that do that allow us to work on cool things, that allow me to work quite closely with the customer, and we can design some stuff and spend 3 hours poring over fabric samples or leather samples or leather shades against 0.8, 0.6, 0.4, 0.2% black in signal orange, then that would be quite cool. So I think we would have the capacity to be able to breathe on some Workshop 77 breathed on cars. And have capacity to do sort of 2 sports car builds a year and then 2 adventure cars, because we're doing Oshe Adventure as well. And because of my upbringing, growing up on a farm in Botswana, the border between South Africa and Botswana, with HJs and FJs and Land Rovers, and I learned to drive a CJ2A, so that's what I learned to drive in, was a Williams Jeep with an Essex 3-litre V6, but still on the 3-speed manual left-hand drive. So, you know, those cars excite me, and it would be quite nice to keep doing those and building them to the Oshe Adventure, which is still the Oshe Design kind of way and ethos.
So what's an Oshe Adventure car?
Well, it's an off-road car. We've got that Land Rover 90 that we've currently got in, so it predates the Defender, but post-series. But there are things that I'd like to do to it that, you know, I mean, Twisted are also very successful, but I don't really want to build a Twisted one. I don't want to copy them as such. I don't want to do an LS swap on it, but I think I want to make it just clean and simple, but still try and capture that Land Rover essence of it from 1963, I think is what I was, because we've got two Series 2As on the farm in Botswana. You know, try and capture that essence of it, but make sure that it's a contemporary car, so that it can keep up and do 85 miles an hour and not scream its nuts off. Nice and easy to drive, you know, just something that somebody can jump into and not have to sort of gird their loins and go, oh bloody hell, and prime the fuel and all the hardships with proper classic cars.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do away with that a little bit, but still keep it a classic car. So and then just clean and simple, yeah. So in this particular car, we're going quite hardcore. We've got a Dave Ashcroft auto gearbox in there, so I think that'll help it. Keeping it in the family, in the Land Rover family, we've got a Rover 3.5 litre V8, but it's got the Holly Sniper EFI, so the electronic fuel injection on there, so that'll make it reliable and give it a bit more power. But a big change with this one over most others that I've seen, or any others that I've seen, is that we've got tractive, the semi-active suspension set up in there.
Okay.
So it's cost a lot of money. I've worked with Steve a little bit on this, and he's sort of spec'd this up, and we have a car copying a little bit of what Roof do. It seems weird to be comparing a classic Land Rover to what Roof do, but I've chatted to Severin a few times, who works at Roof, and try to establish exactly what they do. And they've got 5 settings on their suspension. So because it has a G sensor in the center of the car, which we fitted the tractive suspension setups to 964s before, etc., and Porsches, and work really well. But we're going to have sort of 5 settings on this thing. So effectively 4 being sort of standard, 5 being one harder than standard, and then 3, 2, and 1 being
track mode.
Softer. So track mode. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Just when you need to get down to Tesco's, they're a little bit quicker. And but hopefully what it will do is fix those hang-ups that people complain about with a Land Rover. They can drive like crap sometimes, that pitch and roll and stuff. So having that G sensor in there, and the fact that the damper will correct itself within and make adjustments in 6 milliseconds, so 1/100th of a second, it'll stiffen up that corner or roll it out or soften it up. And I think, and I'm hoping, and this is a little bit fingers crossed and see how it goes, but we'll see how that works. And then we've got an FJ, so we'll do a Land Cruiser next. We've got it there ready and waiting, but probably, at least initially, we're thinking maybe a 1UZ motor in there. So from a Lexus, so a V8 Lexus motor. Yeah. So plenty of torque, plenty of grunt, not LSE, not screaming its nuts off again. Not huge amounts of power, but nice and refined. I think that's kind of what it is. It's less Terminator, James Bond wannabe Land Rover and FJ, and more Pim's a clock. A little bit more refined. So
nice.
So that's the Oshe thing. So ideally, 2 sports car builds a year, and we've got the next 2 years sort of booked in. 930 is what we're looking at. BMW, so an E9, which we're busy with, a 2002, which we're busy with. So it's been a little bit. It's a bit like buses, man. We do bugger all, and then suddenly these Porsches come along, and then it's bunches of BMWs, and you look in the workshop now, and I think there's 4 or 5 Mercs in there. So weirdly, but so it's that's kind of where I think we want to be, and we'll sort of aim for that, at least initially. We can change that, as I said, as soon as we get back into the workshop, I can change that up. But I'd like to do 2 full Oshe sports car builds a year, 2 full adventure cars a year, and then just breathe on some stuff, and then just build cool stuff for ourselves. I saw one of those belly tank racer things the other day, and I thought, how could you not love it? Look at it and think, holy shit, that's so cool, man. We must build one. So I think we'll try to, And the Ford.
Nice.
I was busy with Johnny earlier because we were looking at trying to do something with the chassis and finally get onto that 1938 half-ton Ford pickup of ours as the shop truck. And just trying to bring parts in from the States is just so difficult. It's all readily available there, but the shipping costs just triple the cost of everything.
Okay, yeah.
So I think we'll take the existing chassis and we'll modify it, and we got to do it because how cool, man. And my original plan for that car, and the reason I originally bought it, was that my little boy was going to nursery, and I've told this story to plenty of people before, so they'll all have heard it, so apologies to them. But my kid was going to nursery, and one of the dads I think he was the conditioning coach or something for Northampton Saints, and all the girls sort of swooned over him every time he pitched up, and I thought, hey man, you haven't seen it. I'm going to end up with a 1938 Ford with a V8, 5-litre V8 in there. Then we'll see who's cool, Screw you, Gary. I'm gonna check out that Ford pickup on its, sliding along on the ground there. That's cool. So that's a bit of a motivator, I think, sometimes in these things.
And then by the time it's finished, your kid will have left school.
Oh yeah, man, yeah. It can be his first car. It'll probably just be ready by the time he's learning how to drive, and he's only 4 years old now. So yeah.
Yeah. Like, why is it dragging along the floor? Shut up. That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. It was cool in 2021. Yeah.
No one drives anymore.
Nobody drives anymore. We Uber, or we call our spaceship up on our little, our inbuilt earphones in our ears. So yeah.
When I came into the workshop and I was having a little look around, I saw you've got a motorbike in sort of build at the moment, and I'm not massively into bikes. I'm not sort of like not into bikes, but I'm not like massively into bikes. Used to ride a motocross bike when I was younger,
cool.
But have sort of avoided the road bike stuff just from I don't want to die. But I do appreciate, and I thought it was very visible on the bike that we had in the shop, like you can do a bunch of cool kind of engineering, neat stuff on a bike, and it's like instantly visible. Whereas cars, you can do a lot of cool stuff, but often it's hidden and you can't see it and like that. Is that something you particularly like about the whole bike scene, and what's it like working on bikes?
Yeah, it's a lot more instant. A lot faster on bikes. And yes, exactly. I'd never really thought about it the way you've just described it, but yes, it is. It is instantly a bit more visible. They're far smaller budgets, which is handy, because you do a 911 and you're like, holy hell, sweating every time you have to do a bank transfer or something again. And the bikes are, on the face of it, a lot more affordable. That particular one is a K100 flying brick, so BMW. The R series was very popular. I was down in the bike sheds, the tobacco docks, when they do their little bike builds, and the R series with the boxer engine had become very popular, and there were a lot of them being done either as cafe races or as scrambler type bikes and things. You want to look for one that's sort of in stock. Yeah, that's kind of stock. And even then, I think that one's been souped a little. I think that might be a K75. So the slight precursor one with a 3-cylinder engine. But big, heavy bikes. But then you can see now that they're becoming popular as a cafe builder bike. And Johnny, one of my guys, I think because they're just so big and heavy and 1980s looking. They look like a bloody, German police motorbike. They're probably good to ride. They're not super fast. They're a nice shaft drive bike. And you take 70 kilograms worth of crap off the bike, and all of a sudden you've got something that's transformed, and all you've done is take stuff off. The alternator, I don't know if you noticed, but the alternator is huge. It's about 3.5 inches in diameter. It would be enough to power an E30 M3. So you could put it on a BMW car and it would work. There are some parts that are available for it that are kind of bolt-on. So we've looked at that and we've modified them. Just prior to doing this bike, actually, we built and modified massively one of the brand new Triumph Thruxton RSs, which hadn't been done before. We built it for a chap, and we haven't really spoken about it at all or shown any photos about it, and perhaps one day we will, but we wanted to keep it a little bit secretive. And there's these little tips and tricks and things we did to it. So that was a new bike that we did and converted and made look old with there's certain design elements that are quite popular now. The scrambler element to these bikes is popular. The Brat style bike is popular. So Brat styles being generally twin shocks on the back and then a flat seat, a Japanese style. So it's kind of like a Japanese cafe racer scrambler crossover. And it's got a flatter seat and space for 2 people, because that was popular in Japan, to be able to have a passenger on the back of these things, whereas the cafe racers weren't. But I like cafe racers. I like a nice swoop line. So I've just tried to take some of the elements of that and put it into this bike. And you can do these neat little things like Frenching in that speedo that goes nicely into the top, the triple clamp on the top, and neat little things that you can do and show off. And there's some stuff available that is bolt-on that makes it easier as well. And if you use your imagination sometimes with these bolt-on parts, you can make them look a little bit more special, or quite a bit more special than just stock bolt-on stuff. So,
it was the bike in the shop at the moment. It's really cool looking. I was
cool,
like, I would just put that in my garage. I'll just look at it.
I think I'll put it in my lounge. I think that's where
yeah.
Drain the
Put it in
fluids,
my
put it in the
lounge.
lounge, and yeah.
Well, it had something, and for those that are into bikes, this might have been around for ages. But you're telling me that you have like a chip. Is it like a chip in your glove?
Yes, yeah. So it's a little chip. It's off the shelf product called Mo Unit, but we've got a prototyping ignition system on there as well, because we've knocked the injection system off. But so the chip is in your glove or in your jeans or wherever you might want to have it. But as you sit on the bike, then the ignition comes alive. So there's no key. And then equally, when you get off it, you just jump off the bike and kill the power, but then walk away and it shuts down.
Yeah.
It shuts all the ignition and everything.
So what happens? Let's say you're that guy, pretty cool, cruising along, and then you're like, just gonna take my hands off. Does it just turn off?
No, yeah. Well, yeah. If you threw your glove away, because it's on a proximity, so it's not a glove on the actual handlebar. It's proximity.
Okay, so it's a bit like a wireless car thing.
It's exactly like that.
Within 5 feet or something.
Yeah. In fact, it's probably about 6 feet. So
okay.
So if you took your glove off and lobbed it over a bush, then I don't know. I wonder what would happen. We'll have to find out. We'll,
if you lost your glove.
I'll report back. Yeah. If you lost your glove, it's not that complicated. You have to take the tank off and make a few modifications and bring it back.
Okay.
Bring it back. Well, after you've bought it, Sam, bring it back. Once you've got it out of your lounge, and if you've lost your glove, we'll sort it out for you.
I think I would be, See, I think in that regard, I wouldn't have it in my glove. You're probably riding with gloves on all the time. I get that.
Yeah.
But then I'd probably do...
I'd
have
lid.
it like...
Have it in your lid.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Have it in your helmet, or just on a little fob in your pocket or something.
Yeah.
But
we did that with the Thruxton RS. It's got a big transponder unit in the key, so the ignition barrel is actually quite a large unit, and we just wanted to lose that big bunch of keys that sort of sits up by the speedo and right in front of your vision. So we lobbed that off, and we actually moved the transponder unit to a secret hidden spot. And the key has to be in close proximity to that while you do a special sequence of switches under the seat. And then that turns the bike on. Then you can start the bike and then put the key back in your pocket. Just turn the ignition on and put the key in your pocket and then fire the bike up. And I hope the guys getting out there and using it and enjoying it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that sort of stuff, especially for things that are easy to steal. I mean, bikes, you can still pick them up and move them around or whatever. But
good luck with that flying brick. You saw the size of that engine. I mean, I told you, the alternator's this big. That weighs like 70 kilograms by itself, I imagine.
But I think most of us, definitely London people, have seen the videos of the guys on the scooters, just foot on the bike, like wheeling it down the road.
Yeah. No, that is something. That is something. So maybe something to consider in the future. But
But I mean, you can't really do anything about that. Like,
no, and the thing is, this bike it's an occasional use bike, really. I suppose you could use it as a commuter, but it's not that kind of bike. F40, GT3 RS. I suppose you could commute in that. You do want that to be able to lock and be put away, but this sort of bike is not something that you're leaving outside work for 8 hours and then coming downstairs and finding it's just been stolen. You tend to ride it somewhere. You probably park it within view and have a cup of coffee. And not because you're worried about security, but just because you like looking at it. And then
and then all the other bikers will be like having a look. Like, this is different. What's going on here?
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I think it'll be quite nice. But importantly, it has to ride nicely. So we've spent quite a lot of time on the ignition. Spent quite a lot of time on the carb setup, taking it off the injection, just because we thought it'd be cool. And it should sound nice. So so it should ride nicely. We've spent quite a lot of time working on seating position, making sure that the rear sets are nicely set up, not too far back, so that you've got all this pressure on your arms, because it has clip-on bars.
Right.
The tendency sometimes with these clip-on bars is that you're then sitting at 30 degrees, and man, that can take some pressure. Your forearms are pumped, do 3 miles up the road, and you want to get off it. So no, this has to be. It has to look good, but it's got to be comfortable and ride well too. So.
And is that set up for the owner, or is it sort of like generally for a human? It's probably going to be pretty good.
Well, it's generally for a human. We're all roughly similar size-ish, but we could ish. I suppose. Look. I mean, if you're a really big chap, it's probably not the type of bike you want to ride. But that's the case anyway now. There are certain bikes that I would probably prefer to be on. I could ride a motocross bike now better still than I can a sports bike. I jump onto a Ducati and I'm just, my legs just tend to come up too high and I end up pulling muscles in my groin and stuff now when I ride them. I sort of sit on it and I've got to limp around for a few days afterwards because I've pulled all these muscles. So that's probably still the case. But it'll be a comfortable-ish to ride cafe racer. It's not going to be a hardcore thing. The next bike I'm looking to build is a board tracker. So based on those old, murder rings and various things that they had.
What's that?
Well,
board track racer? Is that right?
Yeah, board track racer. Yeah. I love the look of them.
What the hell?
I know, man. I love the look.
Let's get this up on the screen.
So we'll stick a nice big Harley motor in there somewhere, and look at those! How cool is that? How cool is that Indian, man?
Okay, so what was a board track?
Well, they were racing around on these board tracks. These
looks like a
rings.
velodrome.
It is.
Is that right?
It's a bigger velodrome. It was very popular. Guys used to die like mad. I mean, and not just the guys dying. They used to kill the spectators and stuff as well. Just huge amounts of power. But there it is. I mean, look at that. How cool is that dude? But so take some of those with a nice clean swoop line. I like that line that goes back over the top of the tank and something that goes underneath the tank. And then, what I did was I've got one of these Sketchpad tablets, and you sort of get on there and you draw the swoop line and you draw another line and underneath, and you try and just make it out of 3 lines. So if I could try and build that bike out of effectively 3 lines, man, shit hot. It's going to be cool. Good. Well, up here it's cool. Yeah. So anyway, that's the plan. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And we have that scope. We have the skills. Importantly, we have guys who can fabricate in-house as well. We have guys who can trim in-house. And we have guys who are passionate about them, guys who want to get involved with these. And how cool, we go in today and we all sit around as a team and go, well, what about if we? And it's back to those development days instead of grinding it out, instead of making sure you put 6 windscreens into 6 cars because they've got to get out the door because there's 6 people waiting for that car today, or waiting for parts. And we've done that before. We've done bushes and bearings on classic cars, and they've come in and the bushes have arrived and they're wrong. You're like, oh shit! So you wait for the second load of bushes to come and they arrive and they're wrong because it's a classic car. They're difficult to find, and then you end up building the car again with the old bushes, giving it back to the customer because he has to have it back because he needed it for that weekend. And that's happened to Matt actually with one of his little Rivage that we did for him. And we'd had like 12 hours of labour, and the car went back out with the same old shit on it that we'd started with because we didn't manage to find it. And the stress, you end up throwing things through walls because parts orders have been wrong, and we don't want that. So board track racer. It'd be nice to always have a bike build on the go somewhere. So once we finish this in the background, we'll get onto that. But
that'd be cool.
But and that is an Oshe bike actually. That's an Oshe build. We won't specifically do bikes, but the other one was a Workshop 77 bike that we breathed on, and it was great to do. And we look forward to trying to do some more of those in the future at some stage.
Yeah, they're cool. Definitely cool things to have around when you're walking around. You're like, What's that? What's that?
Yeah.
What's that? Very neat. Right. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions.
Okay.
Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Yes, loads of them. I've said it before, but how do you rank them? They all tend to be, I suppose they involve the cars, but they, for me, have involved the people that have been in the car with me. I've got a little video that I'd had the camera mounted on the dashboard of my phone, and I was just filming it. And I had my little boy in the car, and it was the first time he'd been in one of these Porsches because he was only just big enough to get into the seat that would actually fit in there. And we went up the A5, and I hit the gas a little bit, and it was completely spontaneous. It's completely without politics because they don't bull dust you. There's no way a 2-year-old bull dusts you. And he was going, wee, and he was laughing and he loved it. And you're going up the road. And for me, and I'm so pleased that I've managed to got that. I've got that on video, and it's 15 seconds long. Yeah. But I can play that, and I'm like, oh wow, man, that was super memorable. And then the other trip, and one of my other driving experiences, I think, was just driving that soft African sunlight Sun was setting in one of the Land Rovers that we'd rebuilt, Series 2A 1963, up on the farm with my dad, and who passed away a few years ago. And we're just driving along this African track up on the farm and just enjoying the car and the sun and cool. And a leopard actually jumped out on the road in front of us. And both my dad and I sort of looked at each other in a shocked way, and then sort of tried to make off after this leopard. Immensely measurable and fun and memorable. But then all those times, test driving a car for the first time, jumping in it and thinking, God, and being that ultra sensitive and hypersensitive to everything, and feeling a little twitch in your bum and thinking, oh, is that something letting go, or how does it feel, and then just getting used to it and relaxing into it. And I did that with Faisal's car the other day, coming back from Johnny's late break show. And the sun was setting, and it was nice, and it was cool, and I pushed on a little bit more than I would normally, just to try and test it and to give it a bit of a shakedown, and it just came together so beautifully. And I thought, wow, super cool, man. Same with the now when you think about it, there's a few of those. But often in cars that we've built ourselves, or I've been involved with building, and often with people, I think.
It's always, and it's a common theme that comes through. And it's definitely, for me, it's the people. Like, there are cars involved, and you're going somewhere, whatever, but it's like the memories with those people in that time.
Yes.
Your point about sort of being nervous driving a car and then sort of like relaxing into it is so true. And I think about that on the various cars I've owned or driven. Like, and for me, it sort of revolves around, have I sort of if I've taken a car on track that I've owned anyway, I will then push it at low speed, high speed, whatever I feel comfortable at, and then get the back end out a little bit and whatever. And once I've done all of those things, my sort of like tests as such, I then am like so much more comfortable in that car, because I know, one, where the edge is, one, what happens when you go over the edge, rather than sometimes you drive a car, especially, and if it's a modern one, for example, you might be driving quite quickly, but you have no idea what happens if you go a bit faster, a bit faster, a bit faster, a bit faster, until eventually something happens. But yeah, it's interesting that sort of like comfort that comes when like I'm comfortable in this car. It's not going to kill me. It's okay. Now I can just cruise around.
now you can enjoy it, and that confidence level does grow. I used to find the same. I mean, you may have found it with motocross, but the first 10 minutes on the motocross bike, and you're tentatively jumping it, and then by the end of the day, you think you're bloody Travis Pastrana, and you're still only jumping 3 foot, but you still think you're Travis Pastrana.
Right. If you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, I mean, this question is definitely phrased wrong, but one car for the rest of your life, and you've got another car that costs £500. So one unlimited value car and £500 for something else.
Oh, man. I suppose I should be fair, and I should only base this on cars that I've driven, because things like but what happens if driving your F40 was shit? I don't know.
Could be.
I know. So
I mean, I sold it, so...
I know, it must have been rubbish, dude. It must have been rubbish. I mean, I do like, CGT or F40 would be up there. I'd love to get something sort of pre-war, so would it be that? I don't know. I think maybe a CGT, but I don't want to pay for the intervals. I've got to pay for the servicing.
You don't have to worry about that.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, cool. Yeah, F40.
Cool. Right. What is the most undervalued car at the moment? What do you think should be worth more? Tricky in current market.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. What aren't worth more? I think maybe something like... it depends. It's got to be sorted, but like a C107 Merc. So like the SLs, but a hard top.
Okay.
I think they're undervalued, and maybe even something like an 840, the German Ferrari, because you can pick them up for like 10 grand, and gee, that 840. In fact, I was looking at one for my wife. Yes, so there's C107s. We had.
That's cool.
Yes, look at that, man. I think we've got to build one. I was looking at that for my wife. Maybe I thought because we did one, and Yeah, no, the older one. Yeah, the top black. So E28, E31,
E31.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for 10 grand, look at that. Gee,
Yeah, a lot of style, isn't it?
a lot of style,
Something like that.
Especially if you tweaked it. If you workshop 77 did a little bit, maybe different wheels and just a little bit on the lows, and it's still an immense car. It's something you can probably daily comfortably.
It's amazing the difference between, and this was an interesting example when I said earlier about seeing that 72S next to my car. And my car kind of looks a bit like a 73ST, something like that.
Yes.
But the two next to each other, to my eyes, the 72S just looks like vintage. And actually, as time goes on, I'm starting to appreciate that look a little bit more.
Yes.
But my car just looks so much more like badass. Like, it's not ridiculous. It's bright yellow, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But just like, it's like the correct height. The tires fill the arches. It's got like a bit of stance.
Yeah.
It's got some like extra lights on the front and stuff. And you're just like, oh man, that is, for some reason, that is just so much cooler to me right now than the other one.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of why I like my 1970 hot rod. It's wide arched. It's wide arched not because I like wide arches, because I've got that subframe of a 993 in the back there, and so it had to be like that. But yeah, I like that. It's a little bit rude boy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like it. I'm a bit stancy. I'm a little bit stancy. I'm not super stancy. I'm a little bit stancy.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just like,
it's got to be a bit
good.
more contemporary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you think is the most interesting car to you at the moment? What are you giggling? What are you looking at? Working on?
Well, I don't know really. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of bikes. I think that's primarily what I'm looking at. Those board tracker type things. But there's a lot of stuff that's interesting. I would still love. So pre-war, man. For me, I think I haven't scratched that itch. I don't know what they drive like. One of my mechanics has built an XK120, sort of. It's a bit Restomodding-ish, and I quite like that. It's not that's not the car for me, but something with a boat tail, something. I suppose almost maybe it's board tracker, but in a car version. Where the wheels
big sweeping
actually
lines and stuff.
But the wheels sit up a little bit higher, so the center of gravity is quite nice and low. Those belly pan races, those things that they were doing the Bonneville flats with, and kind of that I think is that's sort of the line that I'm sort of looking for right now. I think I'd love that, but then we're just getting into this E9 project properly as well, and the way we're going to build that as an Oshe car. A 3-litre CSA. It's a CSA engine, and I'm going to keep it automatic. Actually, I'm not going to do the manual swap on it. But I think that can just look so cool if we do it nicely with some nice BBSs and some nice lows and some ITBs on the motor, and so that it sort of performs and drives and handles nicely, but looks vintage, but contemporary-fied. So I suppose it is resto-modded. I suppose it is resto-modding. It'll work nicely. But yeah.
That'd be cool.
So
I like that you do different brands, because you're not just like, this is what we do. This is one model of one car, and there's a lot of Porsche is quite popular at the moment, so people like resto-modding older Porsches, and there's a big scene in that. But I think it's definitely cool doing loads of different stuff.
Well, I enjoy it, but like I said, it does bring its challenges. It is enjoyable. Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
Final question. 5-car garage.
Yeah. Okay.
Unlimited value.
My beige 911 is one of them that goes in there and stays in there because I love that car. Something pre-war, so a Bentley blower of some description. Because that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. F40, because that's cool. I didn't know if I'd like them, but that DLS, I think. Never having driven one, never having even driven a classic Singer, I think. I mean, I just love that. I love. I think maybe the interior's a little fussy, so don't tell the chap who designed it. I'll probably, you maybe he watches this podcast, so I think elements of it are a little fussy, but I think
you can do whatever you like.
Yeah, but
if you're paying that money, I think you can have your interior however you like.
Can you? I thought it was like a kit car, man. I thought it was like, this is how it comes. Anyway.
I think you have a certain license in your insert a large amount
into
of
your
money price.
1.8 or something, dollars.
Yeah.
I think I'd like one of those. And then a classic, probably an FJ45, something like that. So a Land Cruiser, but the resto modded one. So either that or my Land Rover that we're busy building. I think that would be in there as well. So something that's like a little beach runner type, or 4x4, or for the days it snows, and then that DLS and the F40 and my car, because it's got a lot of sentimental attachment, and it's a bloody good car, and you will drive it one day. And,
I will.
And then for how cool, Bigglesworth, pop the bloody flying hat on and the big sheepskin and bomb off in this bloody Bentley blower, but it has to have a boat tail, and I only want it to be a 2-seater.
Okay, yeah.
So, I've got some
I
design
drove
cues.
my first pre-war car the other day. Apologies to the person whose car I drove. I can't remember what it was. I think it was an AC. It's like an early AC something, old, and it had like a crash box. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
So it's like no synchros, no nothing, and it only had rear brakes, of which you could lock very easily, which was interesting.
Yes.
And then, it's like just trying to drive that, just trying to drive it was really hard.
Gird your loins. Yeah.
Like just like changing down. You're like, I can change up, that's fine. Changing down, like double declutching, and then you get it wrong and it just goes, and you're like, nope. And then you're like, okay, I'm just gonna have to stop. Start again, go back up and come back down. But I can see how people get into that stuff. I think I would possibly want brakes in the front, just because it's quite nice to be able to hit brakes and not just 180 your car.
Yeah, no, you don't want that. I agree. Yeah, it's like pedaling backwards in the olden days on bicycles.
Yeah.
You're probably too young to remember those, but we had them where you couldn't freewheel on a bicycle.
Oh, okay.
As soon as you stop pedaling, it locks the back wheel up, so you'd stand on the and slide it around. But you don't want that. You don't want that on a car.
I had one experience on a fixie.
Okay.
Now it's like quite, hip now. But back when I was 10 or something, went to a friend's house and they had one. It was just a bike. It was just an old bike.
Yeah.
And like riding along, like, woo! And then I stopped pedaling. Yeah. And then I just ate shit.
Flinging over the handlebars, rear wheels stopped,
Just like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's what I grew up on. So I don't want that in my classic car. That pre-war classic car. No.
Yeah, no center throttles or any.
No, my brain's too small for that. I told you I was riding my next door neighbour's built an Indian Chief, 1948 Indian Chief, and that's on the right hand. So normally where you'd expect throttle to be, that's advance and retard on the timing for starting. Left hand is throttle. Left foot is clutch and right hand is gear change. And man alive, that's patting your head.
That's everything in the wrong place.
Well, he swapped it over. He said he couldn't have advance and retard because he was going to crash. And he changed the suicide clutch that you actually have to step on it to release the clutch because it's suicide. Because in case you engage the clutch with your left foot, but if you lose balance on the bike and take your foot off the clutch, bam, you're into traffic and dead. So, So he's had to make some changes. I know. Yeah, dangerous as all hell.
But then actually things like throttle and the other whatever that is, advance and retard.
Yes.
You can swap that. That is a non-issue swapping that over.
Yeah, it is. It is, except that you are trying to change gears now with your right hand, and you're also controlling the throttle with your right hand. So you are really into so now you're using the same hand to throttle and change gears. So yeah, it's not as straightforward as you think.
Yeah. Then you need the gears on the other side. And
yeah, and maybe a clutch that's on your left hand because that's a bit more normal.
Or just a normal bike.
Yeah. Even my Triumph Bobber, and that was one of the reasons I came off it, I think, is that the brakes and gears are swapped round. And I think just instinctively from all my years of racing motocross and stuff, that when I was in trouble, instead of locking up the back wheel to try and drag it, I ended up changing down. And
clunk.
I just clunk and then flying through the air, and the rest of it's history.
Yeah, that moment when you press the wrong thing, whatever it is, in a car.
Yeah.
And being able to do the opposite fast enough to counteract whatever you've just done is it's basically impossible. Like you are so far past this thing that you were trying to miss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or even at low speeds, you know, when you accidentally press the brake with your left foot in an auto for the first time, and you end up licking the windscreen, and you get like a nose mark and that small gap between the dashboard and the windscreen. You think, how did that get there? Yeah.
Anyway. Or your passengers just like,
yeah, exactly. What are you? Yeah, clutch. Anyway.
Left foot braking.
I can't do it. I try. I mustn't do it. You know.
Tell you what,
because when it all goes wrong, instinctively, I just use it like a clutch, and then I hit the brake as hard as I can. So,
yeah, I've done it in manual cars. I've pretty much decided that I'm not going to do it unless I really have to for some reason on like track or whatever, and someone's like, you really need to be like covering the left foot a little bit.
Yeah.
But in autos, it was a really interesting transition. So in my race car, I left foot brake.
Yes.
But I didn't for a long time. And then I was like, I want to learn this because I know I'm really bad at, or was really bad at throttle. So you basically want to be like throttle brake with like minimal gap in between.
Yes.
Like you're on one pedal, then the other pedal.
Yeah.
And the people that are really fast but still right foot brake, when you watch their feet, they're so quick at going throttle brake. Whereas I would like throttle and be like, I should brake. So I would like kind of lift it off the throttle and then be thinking about it and then hit the brakes. At which point just weren't doing it. But in most car situations, your seat doesn't hold you at all. Even a bucket seat, whatever. If you don't have a full harness on that's tight, when you press the brakes, you slide forwards.
Yes.
So most people do is they brace themselves with their left foot.
Yeah.
And then they brake with their right foot. So you don't go forward. So then you've got the measure. So as soon as you take your left foot off the ground and hit the brakes, you've then got no feet on the ground. So you've got no bracing. And then your whole body moves. And that's part of the reason why you hit the brakes so hard.
Okay. Makes sense.
Whereas in my race car, I have like a fitted, molded seat that you don't move. You don't move at all. You can press either pedal and you're not sliding forward and backwards, having everything really tight. And once someone had explained that to me, it was like 5 minutes. Like just being like, just do it. And I'd done a reasonable amount of playing on a PlayStation and whatever with my left foot. You don't get the feel, but no, the concept is there.
Yeah.
And then that was it. Just go do it. But as soon as you start moving around, it's much harder.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I have to say, I generally tend to drive automatic cars and left foot brake on those. But it's okay when you know you're left foot braking. But I think it is, it's a bit like when the shit hit the fan on that bike and I'd just been blown past and hit a pothole. I just instinctively, I didn't have to think about what I was doing. I just wanted to brake, back wheel brake, and it wasn't. And because the controls were swapped over, and it's fine when everything is going fine, but when it all goes pear shaped, and what would happen if I was having to brake before slamming into a tire wall, for example, on a track day maybe, and I was left foot braking, I probably wouldn't do it as well as if I was doing it with my right foot, and I would probably clutch control it, the way I would hit a clutch with my left foot, and that's when it would go pear shaped.
I think I agree with you on this sort of the road situation.
Okay.
When something snap changes or whatever, I think it requires a bit of transition, absolutely, on track. But once you've transitioned and you're like left foot brakes, right foot throttles, and they're never coming off the pedals then.
Oh, okay.
They're always there. You've got no other pedals to do unless you've got a sequential box and you need to just like pull clutch out. But then as soon as you've done that, you're just bang bang pedals.
Yeah.
Then your brain just goes left is stop, right is go.
Yes, okay. I suppose you do it in a go-kart. You do it comfortably enough in a go-kart.
You do it in a go-kart. The one thing that you do, and this has happened to me like a couple of times, is you forget to press clutch.
Oh,
so let's say you spin.
Yeah. Okay.
And you'll like hold your left foot down on the brakes, and then you suddenly stop, and the car just goes. You're like,
Oh yeah.
I need to press the clutch.
There is another function. Yeah.
And then there's your feet need to have swapped over and whatever, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, that's when the analysis happens of why it's all gone wrong. But,
Got wrong because you made a mistake.
exactly.
The fact you span off the track and then didn't press the clutch is not the problem.
No, there was a problem preceding that.
Yeah, preceding that, exactly. Right, well, we've diverged significantly. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Sam, really an absolute pleasure again. Thank you very much. I hope it wasn't just one-sided from me, just bloody about Oshe and Workshop 77. But
no, it was cool. I'm very much looking forward to when you've in the new place.
Yes.
And the engine's back in the car.
Yes.
And come up and have a go, have a poke around.
Excellent, man. I look forward to getting you up there. So cool.
Thanks very much.